The Republican National Committee has announced President Trump will accept the party's nomination in Jacksonville, Florida. He's scheduled to do so in August. That means he is skipping the convention in Charlotte, North Carolina. There were disagreements over how the event would be held because of the coronavirus. Our Nikole Killion is traveling with the president and has the latest on how he is defending a controversial treat.
More than 8 minutes of horror. That's 8 minutes really of horror. It's a disgrace.
In his first interview since George Floyd's death, President Trump condemned the incident, but he stood by law enforcement and defended his now controversial tweet in which he threatened the use of the military in Minnesota and said, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts."
It means two things, very different things. One is if there's looting, there's probably going to be shooting, and that's not as a threat, that's really just a fact, because that's what happens. And the other is if there's looting, there's going to be shooting. And it's also used as a threat. It's used both ways.
In Dallas, at a roundtable on race and policing, the president said he's finalizing an executive order related to the use of force and doubled down on dominating the streets.
We're doing it with compassion. If you think about it, we're dominating the street with compassion because we're saving lives and we're saving businesses.
The White House did not invite the county's top 3 law enforcement officials, including Dallas County Sheriff Marion Brown.
When you initiate a conversation and you purport that conversation to be about racism and policing in America, and you fail to include the top 3 law enforcement officials in an area where you are speaking, I think that says a lot, and that causes one to raise the brow.
This all on the heels of a stunning apology from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, who said he regretted taking part in President Trump's photo op in front of St. John's Church last week.
As a commissioned uniformed officer, it was a mistake that I have learned from.
Milley was so upset about the day's events when peaceful protesters were forcibly cleared from Lafayette Square that he even considered resigning.
I should not have been there. My presence in that moment and in that environment created a perception of the military involved in domestic politics.
And Nikole Killion joins me now. She is in Bridgewater, New Jersey, near the president's golf club, where he is spending the weekend. Hi, Nikole. So the president is continuing to receive criticism over next Friday's rally that he's holding in Oklahoma on Juneteenth, a significant day for African Americans in this country, in a city where hundreds were killed in a massacre. What has been his response?
Well, the president was asked about this in a cable news interview, and in essence, he was asked if he did this on purpose, to which he said that he did not, and he kind of went on to say that his rally should be considered a celebration and that this occasion should be considered a celebration. He really didn't elaborate beyond that other than to go on to talk about the size of his rallies, but certainly it's not necessarily a celebration for many African Americans from the standpoint of the location of Tulsa, where nearly a century ago, hundreds of blacks were killed by white mobs. This was in 1921. And so it is the scene of some of the worst racial violence that we have seen in this country. And then you couple that with this date of Juneteenth, which is typically a celebration among many in the African American community to commemorate the end of slavery. And many African American leaders just feel that the timing of all of this is simply disrespectful by the president. California Senator Kamala Harris had some pretty pointed words calling this a wink to white supremacists and saying that the president is throwing a welcome party. Now, the Trump campaign did respond, saying that the president has a record of success for black Americans, and also acknowledging that Republicans are proud of the history of Juneteenth. Also, a Republican official telling CBS News that the president was well aware of the significance of both of those occasions.
And Nikole, we have also learned that Trump supporters attending his first rally since the pandemic must agree not to sue him or the campaign if they contract the coronavirus. So what is this rally going to look like? Will it resemble the president's rallies before the coronavirus, or are there going to be safety precautions in place?
Well, you know, we're still awaiting some of those answers ourselves, and we have certainly put that to the campaign as to what this is going to look like. We do know, as you mentioned, that for anybody who RSVPs for this rally in Tulsa, there is a disclaimer online that essentially says by attending, you know, the participants assume all risks related to the exposure to COVID and agree not to hold you know, the president's campaign or any affiliates liable. So in essence, they basically can't sue the campaign should they come down with the coronavirus or suffer any other illness or injury as a result. So this is something obviously new that we're seeing. We know the president intends to hold more rallies going forward. We don't know if this will now be a staple as far as, you know, people having to now sign off on these waivers if they want to attend these rallies.
And now, Nikole, President Trump is skipping the GOP convention in Charlotte, North Carolina altogether and going straight to Jacksonville, Florida to accept the party's nomination for re-election. And that coincides with Axe Handle Saturday. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, this kind of goes back to the Tulsa issue. I almost want to call it Tulsa 2.0. So, you know, right after the president got all of this criticism for planning this rally in Tulsa next week on Juneteenth, we get this announcement last night from the Republican National Committee saying it has now chosen Jacksonville to host the Republican National Convention in late August. But we now know that this coincides with the 60th anniversary of Axe Handle Saturday. And in essence, that is Jacksonville's worst race riot in the city's history. This is a period in time back in the 60s where there was a Ku Klux Klan orchestrated attack on civil rights protesters who were seeking integration. So it is a very dark time in the city's history. The Republican National Committee did give us a statement on this saying that President Trump has been a champion for the black community. The statement also goes on to say, while we cannot erase some of the darkest moments of our nation's past, we can denounce them, learn from them, fight for justice and a more perfect union for every American. But once again, you know, the timing on this not exactly looking great for the president. And worth noting that this will also coincide, as you know, from all the recent unrest that we have been seeing around the country in light of the death of George Floyd. We know the Reverend Al Sharpton and others have called for a major demonstration, a march on Washington, to commemorate the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington around the same time of all of this. I believe it's a day after the Republican National Convention. So even after this, you know, when and if the president does return to Washington, we do expect another major demonstration in the nation's capital around the same time. So a lot of events coinciding, Tanya.
Absolutely. All right, Nikole Killion in Washington, thank you so much for that.